Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Property Hustler Show. My name is Andrew, and today I've got Lauren and Paulina here with us. They're going to talk to us about the difference between living in Canada versus living in Europe. Guys, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start off really quickly with one basic question. Both of you obviously have a love for Europe, and as Canadians, do you feel like other Canadians might benefit largely from maybe living or moving to Europe?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
When did you leave Canada, Paulina?
I left Canada in 2014.
2014. How old were you?
18.
18 years old. Okay,
Yeah.
so you completed high school here pretty much.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. And then went to Europe for university.
Yes. So I actually did my first year of high school. So I did grade 9 in Poland because I wanted to learn how to read and write in Polish because I could only speak it, but I wanted to do my education there. So I did that for a year and then I came back, did grade 10 to 12 here. And then when I graduated, the intention was always to live in Europe. And because I'm half Polish and I speak the language, I wanted to start there basically.
Going to university in Europe sounds like something you see in movies where it's just like, hey, that would be awesome to go somewhere else. Lauren, you went to University of Edinburgh, right?
Yeah.
And so you got a bit of that experience. You got to see what it's like. What would you say, from each of your perspective, Pauline, you can go first. What are some of the main differences in culturally or culture shock wise between Canada and Europe?
I mean, I can't compare from an education perspective because I didn't go to university here. I never wanted to go to university here. The main reason that I left is because I thought that the education system was going to be a lot better over there and it's free or almost free. And I was kind of at the stage of my life where I didn't want to throw away all of this money not knowing what I wanted to do. In Poland, you have all of the topics that you have are very focused on what you're studying. And as far as I understand, in Canada, it's not like that. You can choose a lot of electives. Even in high school, you can choose electives, which is not an option in Poland at all. You're given a curriculum, you have to do it, and like that's the end of it. So everything I had when I was studying was very much focused on like international business and economics, essentially. I couldn't do anything outside of that. Even if it was my passion or whatever, like they didn't care about that. Equally in Europe and here, it's very international. So we had a lot of Erasmus students, so international students from different countries that do like a semester or a year at a university, and they study the same thing, but they just study in different countries, and you get to integrate and like see different cultures and everything, which I thought was really interesting. And there's none of the like fraternity type stuff. Like that just doesn't exist in Europe at all. Well,
Yeah.
I don't know how big it actually is here, honestly, but it seems like when you watch American movies, that's a huge thing. Like that's university.
Yeah, in Canada we have like knockoff frat houses.
Yeah.
It's like they're kind of there, but like they operate emulating, I think, the U.S. frat houses, but it's not a true Greek system of
Yeah.
the frat houses, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that. Just for context, what did you take while you were there? Did you major in something, or how does that work?
No, I just had the bachelor's.
Okay, and that was free or more or less free for you.
So the only thing I had to pay for was the fact that I did it in English, but that was around 250 euros per year.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's
No, it's nothing.
That's
Exactly.
practically free. Yeah. Okay.
And for international students that don't have a European passport, they had to pay 500 a year. So it's still
that's still
yeah, no, it's nothing.
It would cost $500 a year for your full course load to go to a university in another country. You have to go through some kind of a permitting process to get a student visa.
It depends on the country.
Yeah.
It depends on the visa and it depends what you're studying. So this is Poland and Poland's not in the Eurozone, so it's much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially in Germany it would be more expensive, but I don't really know anyone who paid more than a couple thousand per year, like maybe 3,000-4,000. But it depends. Like I know people that studied economics and international business, right? Like if you want to be a doctor, maybe it's different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's still like night and day compared to here, because
Yeah.
here everything is phenomenally more expensive on top of
Yeah.
that cost of living and everything that you add up. And we'll get to that with the cost of living as a student over there. But Lauren, you did your undergrad over here and you also did your master's in Edinburgh. It wasn't free for you.
No.
Okay, so just for
No.
context, what is the difference there? If you compare Canadians all understand what it's like to do an undergrad over here, but what's it like to do a master's abroad? What does it cost like? What is the education system like? How would you describe it?
Okay, I'll start with cost because that's the easiest one. Definitely rough because it's in British pounds. And then because you're an international student, as much as they're thrilled to have you as an international student join their student body, it is more expensive. I would say twice the price of just the hard tuition. And then when you add the British pounds on top, it's basically thrice the price you would pay for a master's here in Canada.
And what was your master's program in?
It was in global health and infectious diseases.
Okay, and that's 2 years?
No, it's actually 3. So that's actually one of the other differences. So a lot of the master's programs here in Canada, they're about 9 months, 10 months, 1 year. A lot of them don't have the research requirement to do a thesis or dissertation at the end. It can give you a lot of specialized knowledge in that topic, but there's only so much you can learn in 1 year. And really, if you're just taking courses, it doesn't give you the same depth or understanding of that topic. So the way the one at Edinburgh was structured, you would take some basic intro courses the first year. The second year, you take more specialized ones, and then you learn more about research methods. And then depending on what you choose and how complex your specialization is, you could take another year of special courses. And then the last year is just your research and dissertation. So it's very thorough. It just throws you through the ringer. And
yeah, so that does sound like a longer process. And if you contrast that to what we have here, I think people want to get school, a lot of people here at least, they want to get school up and done with sometimes. So it depends, I guess, where you're leaning. Would you say that when you contrast the actual educational benefits of the education over there versus what you received here, I know it's a master's versus an undergrad, but even the system, the structure, and the learning environment, would you describe that as being significantly different, better or worse, long, stretched out, worth it, not worth it?
On opposite ends of the world, different. Something I had my professor explain to me in one of the first semesters of the master's, because I was kind of asking, what can I do to get better? This is great. This not so great. I want to improve. I want to really do well. So she said, what you must understand is that the work that gets you 90s where you're from, that'll get you 60s. Sometimes 50s here.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
it's very demanding. Like it requires you to have a lot more deeper understanding, comprehension. It demands more of you analytically and to critically think and apply more of yourself. It almost killed me, but it was worth it.
Well, I mean, okay, so when
Whereas
I'm
you
getting
could breeze through. Had I done it here, I feel like I could breeze through.
so it is more challenging. I feel like that's almost the way that universities here will tell all the top high school students that as soon as you get into university, expect to be humbled a little bit. And your grades, if you're top of the line and you're in high school, expect to have some struggles first year. And I feel like some courses are almost designed that way, where they want to give some students a bit of a reality check as to it's not going to be like an easy ride. And you have to actually try moving forward. So that's so I'm getting that from at least the introduction into the school system in the UK. In terms of people completing their degrees, one of the biggest struggles I think a lot of people face here is that they go through their entire undergrad, they go and they get these degrees and they feel like they don't end up actually using them in the workforce. How would you contrast that to how universities pay off in terms of their workload afterwards?
I think it very much depends what you study, honestly. I don't feel like I use much from what I learned in university and my current job because it's so different. Also, I might not be the best example because I kind of went to university thinking I don't know what I want to do in life. I'm here. I'm going to try and learn something and then figure it out. I think here there's a bigger stress to want to use your degree because you paid so much for it and you want to use what you learned in university throughout your career.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes in life that doesn't work out. And I think in Europe in general, sometimes people are like, yeah, whatever, I learned this at university. I don't really use it, but it was a great experience and I value that experience and that's enough for me.
Yeah.
Well, here, at least when I think about myself personally, the fact that I'm paying so much for it would really deter me from like having a good experience. I would just be like, okay, I need to study, like I need to do this and I just need to continue my whole life in this career and just do this for the rest of my life because this is the decision I made when I was 18.
Gotta follow through.
Yeah, like fuck it, I gotta follow through. Basically, I need to do this now.
There's an issue where people feel like they need to see some ROI, like some return on investment of their education, right? Parents feel that with their kids when they pay to put them through school. There's a lot of parental pressures there too, where they might say, hey, I paid for all this, you better start using it and make do. Don't tell me you're not happy here because it's not about that. Right? So,
And I know so many people in Poland that studied at one university and they studied something like a language because they were interested in it. And then at a different university, They were studying something completely different, and they could do both of those things. And one of them was more a passion project, and you get like a language out of it, so it's also cool. And the other was more, okay, I need to build a career somehow, so this is what I'm going to study. Well, here you can't do that unless you have the money.
Yeah, it becomes very expensive.
Yeah.
What is it? The lifer students that they describe here, right? They're just people who seem to be always in school, and they identify as a student for long periods of time, and they don't enter the workforce. It ends up being very expensive. But what some people do in order to make that happen is they just remain on OSAP relatively
There are a lot of
indefinitely.
loans. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you don't, the OSAP is interest free until you complete your education
Was it
program.
always like that though, or is that new?
Been like that as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
But OSAP, or the government assistance for school, is basically supposed to be an interest-free loan during the duration that you're in school. So some guys have racked up an insane amount of debt. They just continue taking new programs.
Yeah.
Right. and
That's
say,
insane.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a weird way of problem solving, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for people who enjoy school and they do it more recreationally, I mean, that's one way to do it, but you're
Yeah.
going to have to pay the piper at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
But I think people who do that, they're usually going into specialized careers like lawyers, doctors, the specialization. So I don't know the exact number, but once you get into those professions, it's not going to be that long before you pay it all off. So there is a relatively faster ROI on that path. I don't know many people who just go through program after program without a direct target, you know?
is definitely a minority population that will be doing that. Presumably,
Yeah.
people want to move on with their lives, but I think
Yeah.
that leads into the work area. So I know, Lauren, you've had some experiences with international companies. You currently work in recruitment.
Yeah.
For a company in Spain, or you're working?
So it's an American company, and
So
we
it's a-
work globally on recruitment in North America, Europe, and Asia.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Employment opportunities as somebody who has gone to a European university, both of you, in fact, and what doors does that open up?
I see opportunity differently now because of the job that I'm in. So I don't necessarily tie opportunity to university because I don't use what I studied in my current role. I was very grateful to get a lot of opportunity in Poland because I'm a native English speaker, and whatever job I wanted, they were just like, yeah, whatever, like, we'll hire you.
Yeah.
Which is how I got into recruitment. I think the biggest difference I see in opportunity is when I recruit in North America, candidates are a lot more opportunistic. So we headhunt a bunch of people, and we do this across the globe. In the UK or in Spain or in Poland, you really need to send a very curated, specific message to the candidate to get them to even respond to you. Even if the answer is no, you really need to kind of like warm them up and get them excited about the opportunity. Well, in North America, you can reach out to someone and just be like, hey, we have this job in risk and fraud. Are you interested? They're like, yeah, let's have a conversation. Because even if it's like a couple dollars more,
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, let's talk about it. You know, in Europe, people don't like to change jobs. People are very comfortable in Europe. And in Asia, the same. In Asia, you have more of like a sense of loyalty to your company. So even if you're unhappy, you'll stay there unless your new role and your new job or company is so much better than what you currently have. So it's very difficult to get people out of where they are and put them in some, like in a new environment. While over here, like we hire mostly in Toronto, in New Jersey, and in Vegas. When we reach out to candidates in those locations, they're always just like, yeah, let's have a conversation. Let's just have an open talk. Let's see what happens and take it from there. So it's a different mindset.
You find candidates in North America are more open and just want to have a conversation, see where it goes. Would you say that they're more likely to see more career progression and growth?
They don't
Difference.
necessarily always follow through, honestly.
Oh, okay.
So I think that people are driven by money and benefits here a lot more. While in Europe, people want to work somewhere that makes them happy. So a
Okay.
lot of the questions that I get from candidates in the UK is, what are the values of the company? How do you take care of your employees, but not from a compensation perspective? Things like life insurance, healthcare, things like that. While here, it's like, okay, show me the money. And it's very interesting because you'll get a higher number when we look at our headhunting stats. You get a much higher number of responses in North America, but a lot less hires. So in the UK, not many people reach out to you, but if you do get a passive candidate that you headhunted and you give them a good experience and you take them through the process, there's that very high chance they will accept, even though they weren't
Mhm.
actually looking for a job. Well, here, they kind of string you along a little bit. They attend the interviews, they want to see what the company has to offer.
Mhm.
And then they either go to their current company to get a counter offer,
Yeah.
or they're just kind of like, nah, this doesn't pay off for me.
They're able to do that because there are more options, more opportunities here, or
I think it's more of a cultural difference. I see it as there's the same amount of opportunity, honestly, in a
Mhm.
place like London versus a place like New Jersey or Toronto, because the type of recruitment that I do is very volume focused, right? A lot of the same roles, big teams, we're expanding, we're growing. And so I see that there's basically the same amount of opportunity. Yeah, it's just about culture.
I think with respect to what a lot of people will wonder is what would be the fundamental difference if somebody goes to school here versus going to school in Europe? Is there a difference in the doors that it opens? Are there any limitations? Can somebody who has a degree from some country in Europe come over here in Canada and work, and vice versa? Like, is there different opportunities or limitations by doing such a thing?
I mean, it very much depends on what you've studied, right? Like if you are a lawyer or a doctor, then you can't necessarily practice in different countries, or you need to do some sort of additional tests when you move to a new country. We see it especially with lawyers where they can't be part of our legal counsel, but they can be part of our compliance team, for example. So they're still using what they learned, but at a significantly lower level. And some people are okay with that because they want to leave their country, and some people are not okay with that. So they stay in their own country, or they go back to university and basically do the same thing again.
And revamp, yeah. But will that be reflect also in pay?
Yes, because it's about the role. When you think about people who practice law, or who studied law, they can't practice law in a different country. So if you study in Spain, you can't practice law in Germany. But you can work in compliance, but that's a significantly lower level and therefore a significantly lower salary. People from Europe, though, if you do have a Canadian or American university degree, they do see it as the same standard as their country or even a higher level. Maybe not in the UK, actually, but like I hear this in a lot of Eastern European countries, potentially in a place like Germany as well, but I'm not 100% sure. So it doesn't stunt your growth or close doors, but it kind of depends how progressive the people who are interviewing you and hiring you are. If you're going to work in a local company, for example, a Spanish company, they don't care what you studied in Canada. They want to see a Spanish degree. But if you're working for an international company that has an office in Spain, then yeah, they don't mind as long as you have that background.
So if it's in line with certain work prospects that are international versus something that is local, then this might influence the relevance of your degree.
Yeah.
So for you, for example, the credentials that you got from the University of Edinburgh, does this allow you prospects with international companies?
yes, it does. Like Paulina said, depends what you study. So if you study science, if you study in the UK, because your depth of learning is so much deeper, you actually engage with medical research, recent discoveries, things like that. And you're constantly reviewing clinical studies, clinical trials, vaccine technology, and the differences between, and comparing different healthcare systems around the world. Because you're so involved in research, you have that research background and you can take that to a workplace. Whereas because of the master's programs in Ontario are mainly 1 or 2 years and you're just taking courses, you're learning, but you're not engaging necessarily to that same degree. So I would say because you walk away with more exposure to medical research and pharmaceutical content, and with the skills you build, you do have more of a place in places like pharmaceutical companies or medical research organizations.
Yes, well, I think that makes sense, especially when it comes to medical or healthcare related matters, because there's a lot of international bodies, and they're not limiting to local markets. Medicine, healthcare will not be limited. Global Health Organization hires everywhere, and it doesn't really matter where you're coming from as long as you're able to make the cut, so to speak. So, with that being said, what we want to do is we want to contrast the differences, right? In Canada, we pride ourselves in amazing healthcare. We pride ourselves at least free healthcare. And when you look at how we're taught through universities here, do you find a significant difference in how things are taught with respect to healthcare, medicine, research in Edinburgh versus the way that's done in any university here?
I would say in Edinburgh and the UK, there's more diverse perspective. There's no research censorship. It doesn't matter if what you're saying and bringing to the research discussion table is drastically different from what I'm saying, because the understanding is that with diverse perspective, that's where you whittle it down and get into something real, as opposed to you take a research proposal idea to your professor at Canadian University and they say, oh, there's not that much research on that. Maybe you should do something that's a little more established. Whereas with my experience, at least, my professor had said, well, there's not very much on that. You have to do it.
Okay.
They really encourage you to go beyond the bounds of what's already established, as opposed to this is what is, understand and regurgitate. Whereas the UK, it's more discover what you don't know.
You feel like in North America, even when you were studying science, that it was kind of like, okay, learn, memorize,
Yes,
regurgitate.
that's all it was.
Really?
I never had to scratch my head and think, oh, what am I going to do? I can't figure this out. It was very much memorize, regurgitate. This is what is. These are some well-established research ideas for exploration.
You wouldn't be the first person to say this. We have had several people who have come onto the podcast, and they come from European countries or other countries in Asia, and they will often reference the difference in their experience going through the education system here. People come to the universities here for bridging programs, so that they're able to salvage some of the credentials from back home, leverage them, and do some accelerated programs over here, whether it's in nursing, certain engineering, and even some areas of law. People do these bridging programs. But what they say is that the education system here does seem to be heavily grounded in memorization and regurgitation. And it's been mentioned that there is not as much critical thought thinking as there is in other areas, where which would be in line with what you're saying, that there seems to be a little bit more boldness and pushing of what it is that you know, whereas maybe the education system here plays it a little safer.
And I think that's why people that come from Europe think that the education system in North America is worse. Because, like, I know somebody who is Ukrainian and her sister is 13 years old and she's just come to Canada, and she's saying that things that she's learning here right now, she learned so many years ago back home in Ukraine. And the way that she learned it was through conversations, kind of discussions, as opposed to just like, okay, memorize and then let's move on to the next thing. So it was more of a open forum to talk with your classmates and your teachers. It wasn't necessarily in the curriculum. And now she just needs to remember and rememorize for the curriculum here in order to pass, you know?
In fairness, if you look at the entire North American culture, and I say North American culture at large, the Americans and the Canadians, there is a bit more of an industrial factor to it, or where universities are by far more of a business than they are in other countries, right?
Yeah.
Here we bring in international students. There's synergies with the government and immigration policies and visas they can get, and permissions and accommodations and real estate. It all just ties in so nicely. It's like a well-oiled engine that is just making money. So it's obviously quite a bit of a business here. And arguably in other countries, people argue that it has retained some of the fundamentals of what universities are meant to be. They are platforms for people to expand their minds and further their education, not necessarily going through it just for the point of getting jobs. But even the questions I asked you both, it was largely rooted in, can you get a job with what you guys are doing?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what everybody's trying to do.
Yeah, of course.
Right? People got to eat. So these are some of the basics. But I think now is a good point for us to segue into the actual work aspect of it. In both of your experience, do you feel that the cost of living relative to how it is here, and also with respect to the income that you can earn over there, do you feel like it's better over there in Europe or here in Canada? Basically, should Canadians move over to Europe, work in Europe, and live a better life there if it is better?
I think so.
Why?
I mean,
let's talk about Spain. You're in Barcelona.
Yes. Barcelona doesn't have the best salaries in Europe. In order to get a very competitive salary, it's extremely difficult because you have to work in an international company. And the reality is that there aren't many international companies in Barcelona just yet. There's a lot of startups, but startups are risky. But when you talk about corporations, big companies that you can be a little bit more secure in, they don't really exist in Barcelona. They exist in Madrid and in other places, but not in Barcelona. But I think people are happier. Main reason that I moved to Europe in general is because I feel that here people live to work, while in Europe people work to live.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing. I think that, I definitely make less than I would make here if I look at just the numbers. Not even factoring in cost of living or anything. If I just look at, if I were to compare even a salary in euros, like change it from Canadian dollars to euros of what people make here versus what I would make there, I make significantly less,
Yeah.
but I have a stronger buying power. I have better cost of living, better life. Things are cheaper there, like groceries, better quality. I have more time. I don't do any overtime unless I want to. There's none of that pressure. I clock in and clock out when I want. Unless you're in a very specific kind of shift-based role, this is the same for basically anyone.
Yeah.
I can do what I want when I want as long as I'm performing. And there's no additional work stress that's kind of imposed on me by anyone else.
This is good coming from somebody like yourself because you did grow up in Canada and you did move over to Europe. And sometimes people worry when they compare and contrast. People tend to chase a shiny object. I know people always worry as though they're just getting caught in the grass is always greener kind of a problem where they just romanticize Europe. Europe gets heavily romanticized when it comes to work-life balance and quality of life. And then North America gets romanticized with just being able to make money and have a comfortable living.
Yeah.
And this is where I feel that the Canadian dream of what it is that people thought they could come here for, which is healthcare, safety and security, come here, work hard, be able to buy a house. These things are all slowly dwindling away. At least it feels like that for a lot of Canadians. So people have been looking at moving to different places. You see all these digital nomads. You see people getting international visas so they can go work other places. People who have remote jobs. Like, for example, I know that my father's retired right now. He's on pension. He can go to Greece. And as you said, the conversion and the buying power plays a huge role.
Definitely.
People are able to make, let's say, $2,000, here a month if they're retired. They have some pension, something else going on. $2,000, that converts to what? 1,400 euros?
Yeah.
What is a good salary in Barcelona?
1,500.
1,500? Okay, so if you're getting that and passively from...
Exactly. An amazing salary is like 2,000.
Yeah, an amazing salary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that's a great net, right? That's a great salary to have in Barcelona.
So that's something that that Canadians ought to consider because here, minimum wage gives you something like in the mid 25s.
Yeah.
Right? After taxes and everything, sure, but you're still technically making a strong income. So if you have remote work and you can do that living somewhere in Europe, you're good.
Yeah.
But now let me ask you a question. Is it easy for somebody making that kind of a salary to actually get by? Can they rent a one-bedroom apartment? Can they afford groceries? Can they do, because I know some places have something that is a reasonable salary, but does it actually allot them the living buying power that somebody would expect here?
I'd say so. I think that the only thing is that it depends how touristy the city you live in is. And that's the same for North America, right? If you're going to live in Ajax, it's going to be different than living in Toronto. You can rent, you can do groceries, you can live life, you can have savings. It might not be the most, it might not be like the most amazing apartment or whatever, but you will live a good life on that money.
So what does an apartment cost over there? A one bedroom?
Roughly around 1,000, including bills.
1,000 including bills.
Including bills.
Yeah. So the apartments, like a one bedroom, would probably be 800, 900, depending where you are. And then bills are not very expensive.
Is it usually that utilities are included?
No, so you put the bills on your name and you pay for them. But water, for example, you pay every 2 months in Barcelona. And for me, it's around 40 euros.
40 euros.
So 20 euros a month. Electricity is more expensive. It's also around 40 euros, but it's monthly.
And then your internet bill, let's add this up. Let's do what we're doing here. Okay.
Internet is super expensive. Internet is like 60 to 70 euros.
60 to 70. Okay, but that's like $100 here.
So that's internet
actually
and phone.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
included. Yeah.
Internet and phone.
Yeah.
Cell
So
phone.
like a phone number and like data plus your internet at home.
And you're talking about like a phone. They don't force you to get a landline. You're getting a cell phone.
No,
get
so
a
you have
package.
your own cell phone. It's like more like a SIM card and a phone package. Yeah.
Okay, and that's included all in that.
Yeah. So it's around 70 euros.
You get a package with that. So your cell phone and your cell phone plan and your internet plan, that's going to be about 70 euros.
Yeah.
You have your water, you have your electricity. That's going to be 40 euros combined, roughly.
Yeah.
And then do you have to pay for gas or anything like that?
So some apartments do have gas and then obviously you pay for it. I don't have gas, anything.
So baseboard here is electric.
Yeah.
Radiant heaters. Like, what do you have?
If you don't really have heating, you have an AC.
So how do
It's
the
the Mediterranean.
It's the Mediterranean.
You don't need that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so
You don't really need heating.
what is it? What does the temperature get in the winter?
11 degrees.
All right, yeah. So you don't have heating. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I didn't realize
some
it'd be.
old places have heating, but the reality is that apartments aren't insulated the same way they are here, so heating is a little bit pointless.
Okay, fine. So you don't have some of those extra bills. Okay, so
Yeah, so you're just cold at the winter, but like it's fine.
yeah. Okay, so you racked up now a whopping 150 euros worth of bills, right, on top of your rent. So your base rent is going to be about 850, 900 euros in and around there.
Yeah.
Okay, so 850, 900 euros base rent plus utilities. You're running another 150 euros, including your internet, 1,000 euros or so. That's what it costs to rent. And you said a good salary there is about 1,500. Is $500 euros enough for somebody to get groceries, pay for things like insurance, payment on cars, if they have one? Probably not.
I know so many people that do it and they don't live a poor standard or quality of life.
So 500 euros though for a local person is enough for somebody to be getting by?
Yeah.
Wow. That means that as tourists, when we go over to Europe, we're getting gypped. Like you're spending $100, 100 euros easy going out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that seems crazy.
No, I don't pay that much for dinners. Like if I'm going out with a bunch of friends or something, and then we're just splitting the bill amongst how many people there were, as opposed to like what we actually ordered, I pay on average like 25 to 30 euros maybe. So it's
That's
not bad.
including drinks?
Yeah, that's including drinks.
Wow.
It's including all my beers.
Yeah. No, that's profoundly different.
Yeah.
So yeah, the buying
Yeah.
power is reflected in the salaries, right? You can buy and afford a lot more. You can afford to live over there off of this. So that's really interesting to know. A lot of people in Canada are considering moving to Europe because it sounds like a great idea. Like imagine going to Barcelona. If I went to my friends and told them today, I'm gonna move to Barcelona. I have a job that I can work remotely. I'm gonna move over there. I'm gonna get a nice little villa. I'm gonna live in there somewhere in like the countryside of Barcelona. And I'm going to live a great life. You know, it's beautiful. You have great work-life balance. The food is amazing. Like, why wouldn't I want to, right? But how can somebody actually make that happen? So we covered what an apartment costs. What about groceries? Groceries here are getting crazy, but, you know, what is it like over there?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference that when you go get a grocery run here, you're getting meats, grains, bread, produce. Nowadays will run you about $230, $240. It's really lucky if you can get it under $220.
Yeah.
For a week's groceries for a couple or a family. Whereas in Barcelona, €60, it can get all that.
Yeah. And you're talking about just like a week's worth of something.
A week's worth. So like plenty of meat to feed 4 people, lots of fish, a bunch of fruits, bunch of vegetables, grains, breads, everything. €60.
People here, a lean diet, they'll say they're spending at least $500 a month right now. $800 for decent. Yeah, no, a very lean diet. We're talking about rice and potatoes and pastas, right? You know, a very lean diet.
$600 then.
500,
I don't know. Meats and produce are really expensive now. So if you're just having rice and beans and all that, it's still going to be about $600.
What I find people are looking at is roughly $800, which in euros we're looking at about 500 euros or so, which is pretty much the entire expense that you described. Somebody has 500 euros extra to spend. For
that's
us,
our grocery.
That's the minimum
insane.
on groceries that people are spending, right? So, and the quality of food here isn't particularly good. No one's exactly raving about it. No one ever says, hey, let's go for Canadian food. No, everybody's like, okay, this stuff is just expensive. You know, our bags of milk are going up. A carton of eggs is like, a 12-pack carton of eggs is like $4.50 or whatever. Yeah, it's expensive.
Our highly processed, pumped up with antibiotics meat is triple the price of grass-fed, good quality, straight from the farm meat in Barcelona.
Yeah,
right?
we were looking at steaks today, and it was like, I don't remember how much it was in grams, but it was like 3 pieces of meat was like $37 or something.
That's a steal. Those were prime quality, really nice strip sirloin. So a pack of 3 or 4, 37.
I would be offended if I paid €12 for that.
How much do you pay for it?
I'd cry with happiness if I paid €12 for that.
So weekly groceries for 2 people are around €70 at most. That's like if you're getting so much meat, you kind of have to do those groceries where you need like cleaning products and like things that you just run out of.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing the basic kind of like meat and veg, then you can pay as little as €30 for that. And the quality is so much better. In Barcelona, it's situated in the best location because you have a bunch of farms around the city. And so you have farm fresh food. That's inclusive of meat and vegetables, and people eat seasonal. Here, they don't really, right? Like I think you can get anything you want in a grocery store at any time of year, but sometimes the tomatoes don't taste like anything. And you'll see in the kind of veggie shops in Spain, everything is extremely seasonal. Like you just won't find things that are out of season. you need to go to like a chain, a big grocery store to get something that's not seasonal essentially. And so that in that case is not the best quality. It's still good because it's come from somewhere else in Europe.
That I think is something you find a little more consistently all across Europe. You know, sometimes when my friends visit Greece and they ask me what restaurants should we go to, I'm like, find a restaurant where they don't exactly have a menu. You just go there, a guy comes up to you and say, okay, today we have this. And it's like a random menu that he concocted this morning because the fisherman caught this and this and this.
Exactly. And they went to the markets and they bought this, this, and this. Like
exactly. Food is food.
Exactly. That's so much more common to go to markets, to kind of be able to touch the products. Like there's still dirt on the potatoes and everything. And that's, you know, it's fresh. You know, it's good.
Yeah.
It's not processed. It's not washed 100 times. There's not like 100 different pesticides in it. Yeah. It doesn't taste like nothing. And I understand that in Canada, things like these things just don't grow here, right? Like that's not Canada's fault.
No, but you nailed it when you said these things don't taste like nothing. By the way, one of the reasons why some people are saying that things taste like nothing is because of the way that farming is done here. Farming, the way that is done here, farmers are forced to use certain products in the soil in order to turn. So you're supposed to have crop rotations, right? And when you rotate the crops, you basically diversify the nutritional profile of the soil. Okay? That's the point of it. But in order to just make things grow, sometimes they will just put the cheapest thing on it, which I think is nitrates. I'm pretty sure, but I'll have it corrected if it's not. But basically, you just put in the nitrates, and that essentially makes the fruit grow. But then it has little to no nutritional value. It's just, it looks like food.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And like in Spain and in Europe, you can taste the vitamins. Yeah, you know,
because the soil's
you
rich.
Can't do that here. Yeah,
the soil's rich, and farming is not so commercialized over there as it is here.
Yeah,
right. So there are big differences, and this is where also a lot of people talk about a country's ability to feed its population. Canada does not have the ability to feed its population should trade fail. And that's actually a scary thing. A lot of European countries are considerably more self-sustained.
Yeah,
smaller populations, smaller communities. And they've preserved in many countries a lot of their agricultural abilities. Over there, food is valued.
Yeah,
right.
Because Paulina travels around a lot, you visit Paulina every chance you get is the way that you can travel. So what is your experience in terms of like living there for the periods of times that you do?
People are healthier. They're happier. It could be the sunshine, the fact that everyone walks everywhere, the good quality of food. Everyone seems healthy, happy, and not on autopilot.
Oh, the autopilot thing is heavy here. People just wait for the weekend here.
Yeah.
Right?
You live for the weekend, right? Yeah. And then I think we were talking about this yesterday maybe, but it's like, what do you then do with your weekend? Do you want to do something productive, or do you just want to decompress from the whole week? And then you have this anxiety and this need to do something productive because it's what you feel you have to do throughout the other 5 days of the week. And it's just this whole crisis that people have. Well,
it's like you need to recover from your daily life here.
Yeah, exactly.
In North America, we do have this mindset of hustle and grind, work, make money, right? And money is going to be that which liberates you from the grind. But you also pointed out, I think very intelligently, that money is not the only currency. There are different currencies a country can offer you, such as quality of life, freedom of time, some kind of balance, clean air, good food. I mean, there's things that I feel we don't know how to appreciate. It's just we know that something's wrong when we go visit another country and we come back and we're just like, I feel wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Why do we feel this way?
No, of course. And when you go on vacation to a different country, it doesn't matter where, like, you do romanticize it a little bit.
Of course.
But I think the thing that's the most important is to look at the locals and see what the locals are like. Like the locals in the Mediterranean are not stressed. And that doesn't mean that they don't have issues, they don't have stressful lives.
No, they still complain because that's just fun.
Of course. Yeah, complaining is everyone's favorite pastime. But they're not just like inherently stressed about everything and anxious. Like when you sit in a bar or in a cafe in Barcelona, you can stay there as long as you want. No one's going to kick you out. There's no kind of like, okay, we need to make as much money as possible. We need to just like have a churn in the restaurant and push people out as soon as they can. Like you're there for the experience. You're there to enjoy your time. And for me, the most important currency is time. And that's why I've moved to Europe, because I have so much more time.
I do want to contrast it a little bit, because the thing is, for me also having spent time in Europe, I do agree people are happier. I do think complaining is a bit of a pastime. It is here too. But
I like to do it.
Yeah, everybody likes to complain a little bit. But I do find that it's almost like night and day, where the everyday person that I would meet does not really think about money that much. And I always worry, maybe this is because I grew up in Canada, I always worry about the amount of consideration somebody gives to their future, their retirement. Like retirement plans, I don't know how well of they're thought of over there. But that's also, I think, because there's a little more, there's a lot more community there, and family takes care of family there. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Maybe retirement plans are not as necessary over there because family is going to take care.
Your family will take care of you.
Yeah.
Retirement plan is your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah. Now I just talked myself out of a point. Yeah. Okay.
Well, people are more, at least you see multi-generational homes in Barcelona and other parts of the world.
Yeah.
You see some of them here, of course, but those are families of different cultures and the way they care for each other and, you know, look after one another. You're right. It does nix the need for a retirement plan.
Because here we're also focused on it. Like, how am I going to retire? How am I going to live? You hear people say over here that, hey, you need well over $1 million in order for you to be able to retire comfortably. Right. And people are not going to save that money or put it aside. There's no way. Most people are definitely not doing it. The saving rate in Canada is actually quite low. I know the saving rate in Europe is definitely lower. It is more life focused, so there are different priorities. For those who are listening to this and want to understand like what they would be facing should they go there, I want to touch a little bit on mortgages and buying a house. So Paulina, you recently bought a house in Barcelona, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, when I say a house, I should call it something different. Is it apartment or
an apartment.
condo? Okay, so it's like a condo, which we have here.
Yes.
Do you mind if I ask a couple personal things like how much you buy it for?
280,000 euros.
280,000 euros. Okay. People often have questions about financing there. Did you go 280,000 euros cash?
No.
Okay.
I wish. No.
No. Okay.
So I got 90% financing on my apartment. The way that it works in Barcelona is you need to put down a 10% deposit and you need to have 10% in tax.
Okay.
Which is why instead of an 80% mortgage, I had to get a 90% mortgage.
Is 10% that like a land transfer tax, or is that just
It's a transfer tax essentially.
Okay, got it.
It's not the easiest to get. It's doable because I did it, but usually people will give 85% financing.
So that's more the standard, 80 to 85% financing.
So 80% financing you can get at any bank in Barcelona. That's the standard.
By the way, that's the same here.
Okay.
20% down.
But then do you have additional taxes and fees and everything that you need to account for?
Yeah, so then there's land transfer taxes. And then in Toronto, there's two. You have to pay it twice for some reason. But whatever, everywhere else you don't. It's just one. There's lawyer fees. There's you have to pay realtor fees. Well, not you, but the seller does. There's other things that come into play.
So yeah, the fees that I had to pay were the 10% deposit, which is just to lock in the apartment, the 10% tax, which you pay the day that you sign the paperwork at the notary, and it automatically gets transferred over to the government. And then your mortgage gets transferred over to the owner on that day as well. You need to pay for an appraisal process, basically. So you need to get the apartment appraised before you buy it. And that's something that the buyer needs to pay for.
How much is that?
300 euros.
Okay, so it's not much, yeah.
I paid around 600 euros because I paid for somebody to basically go twice. And they only had to go once, so they returned the money to me because they didn't end up providing the service twice, essentially.
Got it.
I did pay for a mortgage advisor because I don't really speak the language, but that's not something that everybody has to go through.
How much did you pay the mortgage advisor?
So that was 7,000, 3,500 upon signing the contract. And then if you get a mortgage, you pay the rest of the money. Okay.
And is the mortgage advisor the reason why you were able to get the non-standard 90% versus the 85 or 80%?
I think so. Honestly, okay. I think if I spoke the language a little bit better, then I probably would have been able to figure it out because I did get my mortgage at one of the main banks in Spain. What you're paying for essentially is their network, right? Like he knows people. So it was easier for me. So I do recommend if like a foreigner, an expat wants to go through this process and they're asking for more than the standard 80% to pay for this, like it is a lot of money, but you're already dropping so much in an apartment that like I see it as part of the investment, you know, like it really helped me out. And I didn't have any of the stress of kind of sending the paperwork to the right people or making sure that I had everything. I just kind of sent everything over to him, hoped for the best. And he was the one that had all of the conversations and figured it out. I just got an email saying your mortgage was approved. Cool. Went to the bank, signed it, and like, that's it. And then moved into the apartment.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really good. And those are basically all of the fees. You have like a small transfer fee when the bank transfers the money over to the owner, but it's like 500 euros.
just to recap everything, you needed 10% down, you had 10% land transfer tax of a sort, you had to pay 7,000 to the broker, and then you had 300 euros for the inspection.
Yeah.
In terms of qualifying, was there an income to debt ratio that you had to meet in order to allow you to buy this property worth 280,000?
Yes. So the way it works is they ask you for your pay slips in the past 6 months. They ask you for any, if you have any other loans or debts or anything, you need to provide proof of that as well. And they ask you for all of your transactions in the past year.
Okay.
To see how much you're saving, how much you're spending, and essentially what you're spending on.
Them giving you that loan, like what is the difference between should you report the income you're reporting today, buying a $280,000 property versus if you wanted to buy a 500,000 euro property? Like, would you qualify for the 500,000 euro?
No, because in Spain, there's a law where you can't spend more than 30% of your net monthly salary on your mortgage.
That means that
Wow.
so that means what they're calculating on is your monthly payments.
Yes.
Okay. And that is interest rate dependent. So what is the interest rate that you got?
So I got a fixed mortgage of 2.75.
2.75. And is there an amortization period? Like how long does that last?
It's 30 years.
30 years. And does it, like, do you have a renegotiating period? Like in Canada, we renegotiate every 1 to 5 years.
No, so I have a fixed rate. I can always try and negotiate if I want to, but there's no
Just haggle.
yeah, exactly, basically.
But
there's
2.75, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I mean, I think so. Is that good over there?
it's good. It's the highest I've seen lately. Is around 3.75, maybe 3.9 now.
I mean,
But that's the highest.
just, that's gonna be that's hella attractive to Canadians. Okay, now
Yeah.
the next question is: do you have to have some kind of EU or Spanish citizenship in order to go to any of these banks and qualify for a mortgage, or can somebody from Canada somehow qualify?
You can definitely qualify. You don't need to have an EU citizenship, but you need to have more money up front. So you need to be able to pay, I believe, 40 to 50%.
40 to 50%. So if
Yeah.
they okay, that's interesting. A lot of people put that down standard here when you do the conversion.
Really?
Well, I mean, 20% down here. If you think about it, like a cheap property here is like $700,000-$800,000.
True.
You're putting freaking $200,000,
Yeah.
no problem, right?
Yeah,
so that's what 160-ish thousand euros. That's
yeah,
about
no,
right.
it's true, actually, yeah.
Okay, so feasibility is there. Buying that property seems okay. And even if somebody was to do the conversion, the income to debt ratio would be appropriate, right? Do they check for anything like credit history or anything like that?
They didn't check for anything like that with me. I don't know what it would look like if someone who doesn't live in Spain, doesn't have a European passport, were to try and buy a property. But credit scores don't exist in Europe.
They don't exist at all.
No.
So what do they check in lieu? You know what a credit score is here.
Yes.
Okay, so
I
in
learned
lieu-
yesterday.
Yeah, in lieu-
taught me.
Okay, so in lieu of credit scores over here, how do they know what you actually have as debts? Because you said you have to submit all of your bank records, but people can have private loan agreements. Here, loan agreements get registered onto your credit. So if you owe money on a phone bill, it's on your credit. If you owe money on anything, it's on your credit. So how does somebody know over there? Like if you apply for an apartment, how does somebody know that you are in fact reliable financially?
It's an honesty-based system, I guess. Like, I mean, you do sign something saying that you didn't hide anything from the bank, but there's so many people that I know that have a loan in the UK or in Germany or in Switzerland, and they buy an apartment in Spain and they just don't tell them because it's a different country. So yeah, it's not the best, but it's just completely honesty based.
That's very different, actually.
Yeah.
But you told me something interesting when you were renting an apartment, that when you rent or you buy an apartment that they have to renovate and all the appliances in the kitchen has to be new?
That's when you buy an apartment.
Okay, so you bought your place and they had to provide you with new kitchen and new appliances.
Yes, exactly.
That is crazy.
So everything I have is brand new.
That's by law.
Yeah, that's by law.
Is that Spain in entirety, or is that only for Barcelona?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's Spain, but I'm not 100% sure. Even if it's not, if it's just specific to like Catalonia or something, it's basically common practice.
Okay.
Like the only way that they're not going to give you a new kitchen is if the building is completely run down and you're basically going to demolish it anyway and build something from the ground up. But if you're buying an apartment, then yeah, they need to give you new appliances.
Got it. So this really helps illustrate the feasibility of living, working, and owning property or renting in Europe, or at least in Spain specifically. I feel like now we should touch very quickly on lifestyle. And talk about some of the benefits. Some of the things that I know that my cousins in Greece always talk about in terms of being very easy, you brag about all the time, is how easy it is to just fly off to another country. You get cheap tickets,
Yeah.
and things are quite cost effective. Here in Canada, you have to drive 6 hours to go to Montreal, 7,
Yeah.
right? With your stops and everything. But you can hop on a flight, half an hour, 45 minutes, you're in another country, maybe
Yeah.
somewhere on a beach. What's that like?
I have lived in Europe for 9 years and I'm still not used to how small Europe is, honestly. Like, it still amazes me all the time that I can get on a flight for, if I were to fly to Nice in France, it's probably like 40 minutes, 45 minutes.
How much is a ticket?
Super cheap. I mean, it depends, but I
Make
think
us feel bad.
I think when I went, I maybe spent 40 euros per person. There was actually one time when I was living in Malta. Return.
Return?
Yeah. There was one time when I was living in Malta and I bought tickets. I bought 2 tickets to Barcelona.
Yeah.
And for 2 people return, it was 25 euros. And I had to check the ticket 100 times because I was so scared that I'd only bought it for one person.
Yeah.
And it was like a surprise for someone, so they didn't know that they were going. Sometimes you can get things super cheap. Prices are going up now, right? Like,
Yeah.
things are more expensive.
Mhm.
But
That was like a pinnacle deal.
yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
But still, like, with these low cost Ryanair or Wizz Air kind of flights, you can fly for as little as 30 euro round trip,
Yeah.
which is a week of groceries. Like,
How much is it for the GO train?
To where?
Toronto. Let's say
Hamilton to Toronto?
Yeah.
I want to say nowadays 16
$16?
dollars. Whereas
return
when you were last here, no, one way.
one way.
I think when you were last here, it was what,
One way?
like $7?
Yeah.
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 That's great. So two-way,
That's a decade
two-way,
later.
that's going to be $30, which is about 20 euros. So
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
25 euros, you get to fly to
Yeah.
another country and back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And for us here, 30 Canadian, 22 odd euros gives you a return trip on a GO train.
That's crazy that public transport is just so not affordable here, honestly.
No.
There's a lot of things. We don't have
Yeah.
bullet trains. Like, we have great railroad tracks. Right. And we have these slow trains for some reason. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
Yeah.
things different.
And that's another thing. Like, I don't drive in Europe because I don't have to.
Yeah.
I can just take public transport. Of course, driving makes things easier. If you want to go somewhere a little bit more remote or to the mountains or whatever, fine. But here you have to drive.
Yeah, you have to drive. And to be honest, driving over here is a bit of a nuisance. Gasoline is expensive. I think gasoline is still expensive in Europe as well. However, when you compare and contrast it, we always joke about this with transit in Toronto.
Yeah.
Transit in Toronto is insane. The TTC, when Europeans come here, they're shocked at the
People
state of
getting
the TTC.
stopped and things.
Oh, yeah, no, there's that happening too, right? But I mean, what they're mostly shocked about is that there's just such limited infrastructure for the sheer amount of people that we have.
Yeah, definitely.
When we were in Barcelona, I was really impressed with the subway system over there.
We got there and we kind of went, oh my gosh, it works. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
It's on time.
Yeah.
It works.
There's so many different lines. People
Yeah.
are using it easily.
Yeah.
They have
One end to
updated
the other,
systems.
it's like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
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 That's
In
like
Barcelona,
opposite
you can
ends of the
basically
city.
get anywhere on the metro in
Yeah.
20 minutes.
Yeah. When you have such a rich and old city with a lot of historical elements, and they're able to retrofit it with a subway the way that they did, and here we cannot. And
Yeah.
I feel like there's other problems, but it just makes you wonder. In Canada, there's a lot of people that always ask the question, like, what are we still doing here, right? And
Mhm.
Canada is amazing. I actually still advocate for Canada as a great place to be, as a great place to live. There are a lot of things that are amazing, and to be honest, it relies on its people to make things better over here.
Yeah.
But definitely people need the perspective, and I think traveling and visiting other places will definitely open up their eyes and give perspective. And if you live in other places like you have, and like you visited tons of places a lot and stayed a long period of time, you open your eyes to different ways of life. And we don't know everything. I feel like in Canada we have our own little bubble. Not the
Yeah.
real estate bubble. I just mean like our living bubble. We kind of have a limited view of things. And I feel like we're disconnected from the rest of the world because we are. We literally are.
We're super safe and taken care of.
Mhm.
Do you remember when we came to visit you in Poland? We hiked up that mountain and they have these horse-drawn carriages that'll take you down.
Yeah.
So we missed the last one. It was getting dark
Mm-hmm.
and then it was pitch black now. And I said, well, what about the carriage? They can't just leave us here. And you said, yeah, they can.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
And they did.
wow, Canada's really safe.
Yeah.
Canada really takes care of us. Like, we
Yeah.
do have to be super grateful
Yeah.
for that.
Like, should that have happened here, the reason why it wouldn't happen here is because they'd be worried about a lawsuit,
Yeah.
right? It's not like that.
But in
over there.
Poland, you get yourself stranded at the top of a mountain after nightfall.
That's your problem.
That is your problem.
Yeah. Don't be stupid.
You have
Yeah.
to find your way down and watch
Exactly.
out for the wolves.
yeah.
Watch out for the
Watch
wolves.
now
out for the
we've
wolves.
learned. Yeah.
If you had to say why you believe, because obviously you are both of this belief, why you feel that it would be worthwhile for Canadians to move to Europe, how would you sum it up in just a couple sentences?
I think it just changes your perspective. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, yeah, fine. I think that the quality of food is better and the quality of life is better, but it just gives you something to compare to and it enriches your life, regardless if you live in Europe or in Asia or anywhere. I feel like it's so important to leave where you're from and really experience the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I felt like I was blessed enough to be able to do with living in Europe. And I think that perspective is the most important thing.
And you didn't even stay in one place. You went from Poland, you went to Malta, you went to
Yeah.
Spain, and you lived in several different
Yeah.
places.
And each of those places changed me
Mhm.
and had a positive impact on my life. Like, I didn't necessarily love living in all of those countries, but I don't look at those experiences as negative experiences because I am who I am because of those countries and what they allowed me to experience.
The same question to you. If you had to choose a place, why would it be that? And what do you see as the benefits?
I would say anywhere in Europe. I've traveled to a couple places, all very different. There are also a lot of places in South America, Central America. So the reasons for perhaps leaving Canada, the biggest benefit I would say would be to learn how to think when your government is not taking care of you and protecting you from everything and thinking for you. You learn how to think and learn how to love your family, because all the other cultures I've seen, extremely family oriented, and everyone's happy and extremely loving towards each other.
If you were to pick a place that you would immigrate to, what would be some of the reasons why you would immigrate to another place? Aside from broad spectrum learning, like specific things that you appreciate about the place. Because yes, you're going to open your eyes. Everybody knows who would be listening that they would be
Mhm.
considering going to another place because it's going to give you perspective. But you have some perspective. So what is that perspective that you have that you feel attracts you to living in another place in Europe?
I would say the quality of food, because people are healthier because the quality of food is there. I think Italy is a beautiful country. Everything is farm to table, and it is actually the first country to pass a law against synthetic meats, lab-grown meats. Giorgia Meloni, she said, we don't need that stuff in our country. We want real meats from the farm to the table. So it's just extremely healthy. And from what I remember, all the people are extremely loving and kind.
That's enough perspective. I think that really helps us out. Guys, really great having you on the show. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
This was fun.